Hi, everyone. Before we begin today's episode, I want to offer a really clear content warning. This conversation includes discussion of childhood sexual abuse, dissociative identity disorder, suicidal ideation, and self-harming behaviors. These are incredibly sensitive topics that may be activating or distressing for some of you listeners. Please listen with care. Give yourself permission to pause, step away, or skip this episode altogether if that's what you need. Your well-being matters most. In today's episode, I am absolutely honoured to sit down with actress and mental health activist AnnaLynne McCord. Many of you may know AnnaLynne from the worldwide hit teen drama 90210. But she's come here today and I'm so honoured to share her courageous story of living with dissociative identity disorder. This is a complex trauma response that for AnnaLynne developed as a result of her severe childhood sexual abuse. Now, as a therapist, I want to offer a little bit of grounding context here. DID is a deeply human and protective response to trauma in which the mind separates identities. You may have heard of them as called alters. These develop to survive the absolute unbearable. And in all the work she's done that I've listened to over the last few months, she's here today to help us move away from the stigma around DID and move us towards empathy. This is such a raw and honest conversation. Yes, it's about trauma, but it's also beautifully about resilience, self-understanding, and that long road towards reclaiming yourself again. Thank you all for being here. Let's begin and let's meet AnnaLynne. AnnaLynne, welcome to my podcast. It is such a joy to finally meet you.
I'm so happy to be here. The Explore page gods brought me to you. So I'm so grateful for, we were saying earlier, I am so grateful for how you're showing up on social media and a space that can be very mentally toxic for people. You are bringing such uplifting posts and insightful and the invitation to go deeper is in your simple quotes and offerings. And I just was like, oh, someone offering love into the world. I love this. So I'm happy that we found each other in this way.
Oh, no, thank you. It's so kind of you to say that. Thank you. It's very hard to know what to share on social media in this space, in this kind of therapy space, because you're also, and as you would know this from your own story, I'm so conscious that people may be reading my words at, say, 2 o'clock in the morning with no support around them.
Yeah.
So you have to feel that you're holding them and not taking them down a dark path on their own. So I'm mindful of that. So I really appreciate you saying those words. Thank you.
It's true. Your offerings are very nourishing and nurturing, and I'm conscientious of that too. I share a lot, and I'm very explicit in some of my podcasts and stuff about what I've been through. And I've noticed as I've gotten to a more of a settled state in my own journey, I actually talk less about details because I don't want to jar someone. I want to give them enough that they feel seen and validated in their own journey, what they might be experiencing, and that they open up that little crack through which the light comes through, as Rumi would say. But I'm not here to re-traumatize you with my story, So I that being conscientious of it, it's so easy to trauma spill on platforms that get a lot of likes when because it gets a lot of attention. But to be able to hold the balance of just enough for context, just enough to create that relatability, and then offer the light aspect is a balance that I've been working to find in my own expression. So I appreciate that you're leading the front on that.
I think you managed that really well. I think what you're doing, I've watched you in so many podcast interviews in the last couple of weeks while I was prepping for our podcast today. And you do it in such a considered way. And you bring your truth. And I think that's what makes this very special with you, is that you are really owning your story. You're not putting it out on anyone else. You're saying, this happened to me and this is my experience. Might not be your experience, but this is what happened to me. And if I can help in any way, I'll show you the way. And I think you balance that beautifully.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that deeply because I've been really hurt by people who have put forth into my world that there's one way to do things, that there's a way, that it's singular. And I find it so, coming from someone who's lived DID, who had multiple ways of existing within her own body, it's really reducing. It's really diminishing to another person to presuppose and assume that your way could work for them, should work for them, will work for them. It's just not. And even if you're right, they might not be there yet. Allow them the space to arrive at that awareness. That's what for me is most important, is if I can offer something of value, that's going to happen. I'm here to show up for that. Yeah. But at no point is this a directive. In fact, I love Don Miguel Ruiz says in the Four Agreements, don't believe me. I know, I love that book, right? Don't believe me, don't believe you, don't believe anybody else. The truth will always survive your skepticism. And that was one of the first books I read when I started to turn within, when I was around 25 years old. And I had a lot of things that sparked that shift in my life at that time. But when I read that, it was the first time I felt truly seen. Mm-hmm. I felt like this author was jumping off the page into my own brain and saying, you're right. You do know what's best for you. And even if you come about it in a cumbersome, wild, and obstacle-ridden way, you find it. And it was giving me permission to trust myself. And that's the thing that we take away from children. It starts very early. They're free for about 2 to 3 years if we're lucky. And then we have domesticated them, which is to use Don and Miguel Ruiz's words, right? We've domesticated them like cats and dogs. We've told them what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad, what's a boy, what's a girl, what's this, how to feel, how not to feel, how to express, how not to express. And you take this free being who's wild and natural and nature's expression of itself, and we confine it in this invisible cage from which they will have to find a way out of. But first they have to realize it's even there. They're so young and impressionable, and they trust us so deeply that they don't even see the invisible walls coming down around us until it's too late. And so for me, I deeply honor the stepping stones that another person takes to reach the same path that I might be on. And that those stones might be very different than the stones I took, but we're crossing the same river and we're arriving on that same path together in some capacity. And our paths will cross at that magical point that they were always going to, that meeting point we were always going to find. So I really appreciate that reflection, because it's something that I do with conscious intent, that no person who hears me speak or experiences me, whether across the table at, having coffee and tea or on a podcast or wherever, I want you to know that your way is just as valid, if not more valid. I might stand to learn something from you than my own process and what I'm experiencing.
I love the way you said there about learning from others too. And that's what your work is, isn't it? We're learning from each other the whole time. I want to come back to something you said about the invisible walls. And you really did have some invisible walls put up around you, didn't you? You really did. And I just wondered whether, if it felt safe to do so, just to give our listeners some context here about where your journey began. who are you? Where did it come from? I know it's a massive question because I don't expect you to go through your entire life, but what was your journey like to get to here?
Well, on July 16th, no, kidding.
I love it. I'm here for it.
1997, enter AnnaLynne. It's interesting because I learned my life in reverse, right? So I had this whole life that I'd lived for 3 decades. And then when I was 31 years old, I had all these childhood memories of CSA, of childhood sexual abuse return. And discovering my journey was nonlinear. It was, I lived a life that I thought was my life. And then I found out one day that the script had changed and it was changing retroactively. So I was like, whose life have I been living this whole time? Because this is not my life. And the irony with my doctor, while I was in EMDR treatment, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. You know this, but for the purpose of your listeners, an incredible treatment for individuals who have experienced, it's for PTSD, but for individuals who have experienced domestic and sexual abuses, it's become really, really helpful. Even though initially it was geared towards like war veterans and that type of PTSD. It changed my life, and the treatment that I underwent, and then the incredibly nurturing doctor that I found, who I'm so grateful to for her, everything about her. I love her. She's to play a role not unlike you, where your role is to become obsolete or at least minimally utilized. It's such a gift that you give to the world. It's a sacrifice that you make sacred another in the work that you do. But so for me, I had worked fighting sex trafficking for a decade, and then I walk into treatment. My very first EMDR session, we did 2 weeks of intake. I vomited out my entire story. I was like, let's get through the intake. I've got stuff to do. I'm busy. I wasn't trying to hang out in therapy. I was like, I'm not going to be there for 10 years. I've got stuff to do, And this is me, my poor doctor. She was just looking at me like, this girl. She has no idea the can of worms she's about to open. She's such an angel though. But so first session, can of worms just fully opens, and I see this little girl, and she's me, but she's from about 17 feet away because I had clearly left my body. And this was an image that we were working with. And I think this is actually a really important part that I'll just interject quickly. When frozen images or slightly moving but stilted images flash through life over and over again, this is something we should pay attention to, everyone. Things don't flash from your past without reason, without merit. And I had these icky, that was the word I gave my doctor because I didn't know how to describe the feeling around it, icky imagery, somewhat moving pictures. This particular one was a frozen image, flashes that would pop up through my life, and they were consistent. I mean, they would pop up, I'll say once a month, just to show the frequency. And it would be a movie, it would be someone talking. I never put 2 and 2 together because you're not supposed to. Your brain is protecting you until you're ready to actually process, and that's a sacred process, and I honor it deeply. I wasn't supposed to know until I knew. But when my consciousness knew that my body was safe to actually remember my life, this frozen image became very prominent in my awareness. And it was the one that we used that day as the pathway in with EMDR. So we coincided the buzzers in my hands with this frozen image, and we went in to ask the CEO brain, what's this all about? Mm-hmm. Well, the frozen image became unfrozen. And what I had told, the story I had told, or the brain had told around that image, completely disseminated. And what played out was not at all what I thought that moment was about. And icky was an appropriate word because I was 8 years old, and it was when I lost my virginity. And I witnessed this happening from 17 feet away because the memory played out from where my consciousness had left my body and was looking at myself from the kitchen that I was in and the house that I was in. And I'm like, what's happening? No. And I came out of the EMDR and I gave the buzzers back to my doctor, and I was tears streaming down my face, and I was like, no. I work with these children. I fight sexual abuse against children. This didn't happen to me. That's not my story. I couldn't hold it. It became such that little part of me that was 17 feet away, she had the memories. I didn't have them. And that separation was that glass cage that you were mentioning. And so it in reverse, as I learned my story, I'm walking you through, I had to go back to the beginning at this point, and it was an entirely different beginning. The script had been erased and rewritten, and I wasn't privy to the rewrite process. So now I'm going through black out, shut door after shut door, trying to get into my own psyche to find out what the hell is my life? Like, I don't even know. And piece by piece, I found the fragments. I love puzzles, and I was like, okay, here we go. Here's the biggest puzzle of existence. This must be why I love puzzles, because I myself am these fragmented little puzzle pieces, and I need to find the whole picture. And with my doctor and with sound therapy and breath work and plant medicine, I began the journey of piecing this puzzle of AnnaLynne's life back together. And it started in meager beginnings with growing up in American poverty and trailer parks and low-income housing, or housing that was supported by rich grandparents. And all of my memories of this time there were this grainy fuzziness to them. And then there was an awareness that I didn't have a lot of childhood memories, which is another thing that people experience. Like, it was a black hole, a lot of my childhood, people would be like, oh, my 8th birthday. I'm like, what's that like to remember your 8th birthday? I have no idea. So I started out as this little but why kid. I was is a strong word, I always like to say, because she's still there. I but why everything. I loved education. I loved school. I was homeschooled from kindergarten through 12th grade. I never went into an actual school. It was very sheltered upbringing, but I didn't care because I loved learning. And my parents would take my school books away from me as a form of punishment when I was younger, because I'd be jumping up to the refrigerator trying to get my school books. I was a complete nerd. Again, was is a strong word. I am a nerd. I love it. And the education of life itself continues to be my teacher. But I wanted to learn everything. And I found myself as the little oddball, a little odd man out, because I was so sheltered. We were around very religious fundamentalists. My father was a pastor. There was a lot of sheltered aspects of just normal life that children would experience. Even if they were in this kind of fundamentalist upbringing, they would go to a school and get some kind of exterior education. I had none of that. And then at 15, I spat myself out of that life and ran to Miami and New York to study acting, because it was my dream since I was 9 years old in a trailer park to be an actress. And everyone was like, good luck, kid. You don't know anybody. You have no money. That's never happening. And I loved when people thought they should tell me no. So I was like, oh, really? But so I find myself in New York at 15. I'm now experiencing culture shock because I've grown up in the American South, where we are very Southern and slow down there, and not slow because we don't get what's going on, just slow like we're not going to let you know we know, And then in New York, they're like cursing you out to say hello, I'm like, oh God, you said the F word, It's very shocking.
and you were only 15. And
I was 15, and then like, shoo, major culture shock. Then I morph into my New York version of myself, and suddenly I'm cursing everybody else and everybody out, and the F word became my favorite form of expression. And I just, that life that I had from 0 to 15 just got stuffed in a closet and put somewhere for later, because I had stuff to do. I was a working girl now. And I lived this very exciting, nonstop, high anxiety, manic. I was diagnosed bipolar. We would later find that it was, all to do with my DID, my dissociative identity disorder, that I would go on to be diagnosed with. But at the time, I used that mania as fuel, like who needs cocaine when you don't sleep because you're manic? And it drove me to turning 18 and moving to Los Angeles, to getting on a show that was critically acclaimed with Nip Tuck, a very industry watch show. And that was a huge break in my career, and my team was very excited. And then I was offered 90210. And at this point, the tsunami of my anxiety and inertia and mania were beginning to catch up. They had sucked all the way back until they couldn't suck back anymore. And I had a 150-foot wave ready to come crashing down all around me. And that was around the time that I started the show. And it was managing the tsunami with working 100 hours a week and being in the limelight. And I was living the life. I was living the life that is the glam dream life that I wanted as a 9-year-old, and so many people want. And I was in my bathtub at night, wanting to slit my wrists, wanting to end it all. A couple attempts on my life, and I say, at this point, I look at that girl that I was, and this is something that I use when I talk to young, not necessarily young people. I've worked with people who are older than me who are dealing with this. But when someone's dealing with suicidality, I do not respond as a therapist. You're going to be like, oh no, liabilities. But I say, okay, what part of you needs to die? What part of you needs to suicide? I don't say, please don't do this. I don't say, no, like stay. I validate that there's something in you that's saying something needs to die. It is not your body, but a part of you might need to go. And I suicided many parts of myself that were abusing me, that were neglecting me, that were abandoning me, that were betraying me, that weren't showing up for me, that were showing up for everyone else in the entire world but me. Those parts of me, I had to bury them. I had to say goodnight to them forever, do a little ceremony, dig into the ground and put their essence there and say, thank you for protecting me for the times when you were a protector. I'm going to take it from here. And internal family systems, IFS, was something.
I knew you'd love it. I knew you'd love it. It's beautiful,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it really is,
Yeah.
because if you're uncertain as to whether or not DID is something that you might be struggling with, IFS is a pathway in to just check in with yourself, because we do split into these protectors. And I obviously, for the sake of your listeners, I don't know if they're aware of IFS, but for me, when I learned about it, when I learned that parts of us will jump up in front of us and say, no, how dare you? The defense mechanisms, those voices, I suddenly had labels for the aspects of myself that weren't separating to fragment me. They were separating to save me. But I say the coping mechanism that saves you becomes the defense mechanism that kills you. And I was being stifled in my adult life by these defense mechanisms that were running rampant and shutting out any goodness and any love that could come towards me, because I was groomed to believe that this person, who was a very influential person in my life and in the life of people around me, and I believed this person loved me. I believed that this person saw in me that I was a big girl, that I was a smart girl, and I wanted to be smart because I wanted to know everything. And this person loved me and saw that I was smarter than the other little girls, and I was a big girl and I could do big girl things. Yeah. And that grooming was so deep and so fired and wired together with an expression of love that is supposed to be so sacred between two people who are adults, who are consenting, who are holding a space of connectivity that transcends space and time in my experience now as a more healed body and heart and soul. And that those depths to take innocence and mire and wire it in such a dark way, but in a way that feels good and exciting for the little girl, created just vast amounts of confusion inside myself about what love was, about what it looks like. I had married abuse and love as one thing, so I was looking for abusive dynamics. I was very powerful and very provocative, so I would provoke and ask for partners to show up in this abusive way, and if they wouldn't, I would punish them, because how dare you? You don't love me. You don't love me if you won't do this to me. And I had to come all the way into this space where we've been able to meet, and we're here now with each other, where I've gone back and loved that little girl and told her how wise and smart and what a big girl she was, for ways that had nothing to do with what she was groomed to believe.
No.
And that now it's time to see innocence as the supreme offering. They had made my innocence dirty. So, and I say they because I would go on to remember other people beside that were friends with this person that did stuff to me as well as a child. And so I just knew that people cross your body boundaries.
Yeah.
And I had a strength and a power about me that I exuded. It was toughness, I would later learn, but at the time I thought it was strength. People on the outside couldn't get in. If you try to touch me, I'm gonna wrench your wrist backward. You're gonna end up in the ER. But if you were a friend, if you were in my circle, you had carte blanche to abuse and violate my body. That was allowed, because I remember that means I'm a big girl. That means I'm a good girl. And so I had a friend sexually assault me when I was 18, 19 years old. Quote unquote friend, spending the night at my house. And so these details, I say things, the fire and wire together a lot, because it really helps me realize that something coming from the external environment mixed with how I'm feeling on the inside can marry into a belief that I start holding without knowing I'm holding it. And then I start implementing that belief as a rule, as a law of AnnaLynne's existence. And I, thankfully, again, these beautiful authors like Don Miguel Ruiz and Eckhart Tolle and so many, actually even Brene Brown and Dolores Cannon and other, I would go on to find deeper and deeper ways of exploring my internal world. And seeing where beliefs had the origin. The origin is the key. That is the end of the loop is the beginning of the loop. And I would go almost all the way to the end of the loop and all the way back, and almost to the end of the loop and all the way back. I'm now closing those loops. Those timelines are ending. I time travel all the time. I go back into these moments with myself, and I bring an army of AnnaLynne sometimes, but I'll get baby AnnaLynne out, or I'll sit with her and be like, wow, you're so brave.
Tell me about that, because that's a really important part of the work, isn't it? Is sitting with.
Yes.
And feeling brave enough to sit with, as opposed to exiling her, if we're talking about internal family systems, pushing her away, allowing her in. And that work it's really painful, isn't it?
It is.
It's really painful work, and it takes real courage, and it touches parts of you that you haven't touched before or been.
Yeah.
And bring out vulnerabilities in you that you haven't allowed. There's no way you would allow yourself to be vulnerable. No
Definitely
way.
not.
And
No way.
suddenly you have a child in front of you, your younger self,
Yeah.
and you are having to dig really deep, aren't you?
Yeah.
To give her what she needed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's It's a really sacred process. It's really, I hold it in the highest reverence because it's like Jungian philosophy, you know, it's the shadow. It's the parts of ourselves that we reject. And the people that love us teach us to reject it, so why wouldn't we? And the world around us teaches us to reject it, so why wouldn't we? And school and peers and everyone teaches us to reject it, so why wouldn't we? When I learned that there was no such thing as right and wrong, I was like, wait, what? You mean I've been believing in this lie this whole time? It's subjective. Right and wrong is subjective. Obviously, we have laws of like, let's not kill people, everybody. You know, ideally, you know that without a law existing. You just like don't want to kill someone. But then there's the reality of what we put onto another person of right and wrong, and what collectives, what majorities will put onto a singular person or a minority of right and wrong. And it has no basis in anything other than collective belief systems. And this stops us from being able to embrace that child. So for me to go back in and sit with these, like the amount of shame, because I'm not an innocent here. I was innocent at the time, but I went on to use my pain against other people, which is what we do. I had to go in and look at the parts of me that caused harm to other people and say, you know what? I get it. I get why you did and said that.
I understand you. Yes.
I understand you. You were showing up for me. You were saving my life. That's what you believed, and that was true for you. So it was true. And you know what? It's done now, and maybe we'll never do it again, hopefully. But in this moment, I'm not adding to the stone throwing. Whomever be without sin cast the first stone. The words of a prophet who his story's been bastardized horrifically. But I love the Christ words. I love, the one thing I retained from the hypocrisy that I experienced in my youth with religion, I never shied away from the words of Christ, because to me they reign ever true. And they're as true to me as the Buddha and Kuan Yin and Hare Krishna and all of these incredible teachers who have come through our world and brought these depths of self to the storyline of the human experience. And he said, he knelt in the sand next to a prostituted woman who needs to be stoned to death. And I definitely would have been her. So this really was relatable for me. I was like, I'm her. And then everyone would have stoned me to death. And he just knelt in the sand, drew his fingers in the dirt, according to the story. And he looked up at all of the pious people. And he said, whoever be without sin, cast the first stone. If you've never missed the mark, that's what sin, the word sin means in the Hebrew language, missing the mark. It's actually for archers. It's a word for archers. That you didn't hit the target right on point. People bastardize that word and its meaning too, but it actually just means you missed the mark. If you've never missed the mark, if you've hit that bullseye every single time, stone this young lady right here in front of me. But they all had to walk away because every single one of them knew we're human. Mm-hmm. And I bring that into the way that I witness myself. And I say, I'm not going to stone you, honey bunny. Not me. You can find someone else to shame you and keep your shame story going, but you're not going to get that from me. You're going to get a fierce, ferocious amount of love. And it will feel icky and yucky and uncomfortable until it starts to feel nurturing and nourishing and incredible, because it's what you deserve. And when we're wired to think that love is abuse, we don't want love. It's terrifying. So showing up for that terror, showing up for the parts that I would push against my own self. Like, why aren't you mad at me for doing this to myself? Like, yes. Right? And it's, when you say it out loud, it sounds crazy, but we don't say it out loud. We live this out in the circles and cycles of our mind.
If you're in private practice, you know how much care and attention goes into each session you hold. But outside of the therapy room, there's a whole other side of the work: scheduling, documentation, billing, insurance, telehealth, and it can all add up. That's where Simple Practice can really help. It's an all-in-one electronic health record built to support the flow of your practice. Everything's connected: your calendar, client notes, billing, and even secure telehealth, all in one place. The goal isn't just efficiency, it's ease, so you can spend less time juggling tasks and more time being present with your clients and with yourself. Whether you're growing your practice or looking to simplify your systems, Simple Practice offers a sense of calm and clarity in the middle of it all. For new customers, you can get an exclusive promotion by going to simplepractice.com/Helen Marie and get a 7-day free trial, then 70% off for 4 months. Please see show notes for more details. I love that story you shared. I think that will resonate for so many people, that we get so caught up in thinking that we aren't perfect or that everyone else is perfect. And I think it reminds me of a concept that one of my early teachers shared with me. And he said, and he was a forensic psychotherapist, and he said, I've not met someone yet whose story is so, who's done horrendous things, whose story hasn't been worse. And he said, and the closer you get to someone and learn their story, the less likely you are to judge them.
Yeah.
And it's that, isn't it?
It's literally that. You know, I've spent two decades plus playing the quote unquote villains.
I
And
can say that to you because I heard you talk about playing the villain, and I wondered whether, and you really have played that very tough villain character. And I wondered, looking back, how much DID played a part in that. And it would have done, and we'll come to that. But I wondered if it might be useful just for the listeners who may not be, they may never have heard of DID or be familiar with it. And I know you could give a definition of it, but maybe a definition, but also what it's manifested as for you, because everyone's different.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always use the analogy of, if you look at your image in a mirror, there's one of you. But if you keep standing there and someone taps that mirror with a hammer, suddenly the fragments create multiple images of you. You're still within the same frame, but now all these shards will show separate reflections. They don't cross over as one. It's little you over here, little you over here, little you over here. And how that showed up in my life when I was unconsciously DID, which was prior to my diagnosis, and for a good 15 years of my career, I didn't understand why people thought acting was so hard. I was just like, it's so easy. Like, you just show up and talk. Like, what's wrong with you? And I didn't realize I was splitting every single time I was creating a new character. And this is what it would look like. The first 2 days, severe anxiety, absolute panic, like can't be comfortable in my own skin on set. So afraid that I'm like going to do it wrong, and then 36 to 48 hours into a new show or a new project, no one can tell me anything. I don't need a director. I don't need opinions. I know everything about this character, and I am the end all be all on it. So don't question me. And also, if you give me a suggestion, I'm probably just going to nod my head and not use it. Like, it would, the pendulum swing was so vast, but it was this certainty of like, this person is me. Like, I know this person.
Wow.
But I was playing, psychopaths and characters that had done like all these crazy things, and I could, when I look in hindsight, back in time, something really clued me in. The directors or actors that I worked with in times when I had split into very severe characters, I would get really uncomfortable being around them or I would morph into that character around them. But I
Okay.
would either go withdrawn or I would play the role. I didn't feel that I could show up as AnnaLynne as she knew herself to be. So the core AnnaLynne. Even before I knew that I was DID, I was basically essentially saying, you are part of the bubble world I created as this me. So I only can be this me around you, and you can only be around me when I'm this me. Otherwise, you get a withdrawn me or a reenactment of that time. And when we were going through therapy on this and really, finding the glue, as I always like to say, for those mirror shards, which is self-love. And now I ooze it, so my shards have found fusion. But for a long time, that was the hardest love to find, was the one for myself. But I started seeing how there was a moment where I was returning from one like very dark little character, who's very disturbed, delusional little girl, to 90210, who's just this like Beverly Hills bombshell, so fun, so crazy, so wild. And so this like these two aspects couldn't have been more polarized. I mean, they would never cross each other's paths in real life. And now I was ending one at 2 a.m. in the middle of a night shoot to go to the next one at noon. Then, and I couldn't find her. I went to my producing director like three shots into the first shooting day, and I was like, I forgot how to act. Like I don't know what I don't know what to do. He's like, okay, well, you haven't forgotten how to act. Like you've been doing this for years. You're fine. It's day one. It's back to school. Like it's you're just getting comfy. And I was like, I was so sure that he was wrong. Like Naomi was gone. My character from 90210 was gone. And I was now incapable of being funny and being light. I was like murderous. I had this dark little edge to me. And it was, of course, a couple days in, I found my rhythms and I re-enlivened that aspect and put the other one to sleep. But I was still in oneself and I couldn't get out of her. And she reflected this, I think is why it was probably as hard as it was. This particular character, the director sat down with me and was like, tell me all your insecurities, tell me all your fears. Like, I want to infuse as much of your truth into this character so that we can go as deep as possible. And I was so game for it when we were writing it, but then it was really confronting when I had to play these insecurities in front of a crew full of people, yeah, or a set full of crew. But her internal process was a lot like me. And I think that I felt seen by allowing myself to be this disturbed little girl because parts of me were very disturbed. I was disturbed because someone had disturbed me. And I didn't see the world through the lens that it's neurotypical. I wasn't able to see through a lens that allowed love to be love and pain to be pain and these very neurotypical notions. I had a distortion on what love was. And this character thinks she's saving her little sister's life, and she's harming another child in the process to save her sister, and she thinks it's love. And I think that I felt really seen while doing the movie. And the second it was over, all the shame of what did you do? You bad girl. You hurt someone. How could you? And it was just, I went into a world of psychological hurt that made being happy and fun and loving and silly and goofy and Naomi impossible to find. Yeah.
Impossible. Is that when you then thought, I need to go to therapy? Did someone support you on that journey at that point? Was it obvious to others that you needed more support at this point?
It would have been lovely if I had opted for treatment at that time. I did not. It would be like another 10 years. I wish that I had opted for therapy at that time. I know many people saw signs, but I was one of those don't tell me what to do or at your own peril, kind of thing. So I so I would go deeper into my unconscious. That would be when I would slide further into suicidal ideation and suicidality. The It's always darkest before the dawn. It got very, very dark before the dawn. And this was years of navigating it. And then a friend asked me if she told me she was doing a documentary on ayahuasca. And she said she needed a skeptic. And I was like, you're a resident skeptic. Here she is. I'll do it. And I just did what my 5-year-old but why kid wants to learn everything self would do. And I started researching exponentially every detail that one could learn about ayahuasca, about DMT and monoamine oxidases inhibitors. And I went down a full rabbit hole of brain, knowledge, thought, think, analyze, logic. And the entire time I was avoiding the single most crucial aspect of healing, which is our incredibly brilliant, intelligent system, the body. I was neck up and I had no interest in going anywhere near what was containing all the rage and all the grief and all the fear and terror. And it would be several years later when I started to have PTSD blackouts where I was losing time that I realized I can't sustain this anymore. There's no self-help book and workshop online that's going to get me out of this. I need to actually get help. And a friend who's actually a British psychotherapist and author of The Invisible Lion, Benjamin Fry. He wrote The Invisible Lion. It's amazing.
Yes.
We actually met each other on the League. We started talking because I was interested in neuroscience, and we ended up like not dating at all, but we ended up just building a friendship because we had such similar interests. And his initial book was his own story, and I read his book. And I started to feel a lot of discomfort in my lower body, in my groin area. And I was, ironically, I was talking to my body. And I remember being like, you're safe. It's safe to feel this discomfort. It's okay. But not thinking like, why would I have burning sensation in my groin while reading about someone experiencing childhood sexual abuse?
Of course.
The body was talking to me, and I had read Bessel van der Kolk, the Body Keeps the Score, and Peter Levine and Stephen Porges, all of these brilliant doctors and therapists who tell us the somatic aspect is the pathway. You got to feel it to heal it, right? And I had all the knowledge in my brain, but I couldn't connect the dots. I was so dissociated from my body. It was too dangerous to feel. And I would go into my session with my doctor when I started EMDR, and she would go on to turn the buzzers on, and I just kept asking her to turn them up, turn them higher, more intensity, more intensity. She's like, honey, I can't turn them any higher. And she later told me I had the lowest skin sensitivity of any client she'd ever worked with in the history of her work, because my body was saving me. My brain was saying it's not safe to feel. It's been torturous in this little body, so we're going to turn down the heat. And this is very dangerous. I wore it like a badge of honor. I thought it was so full of merit that I had a high tolerance for pain. And I always say now, I'm like, if you have a high tolerance for pain, you should ask yourself why. Why are you able to tolerate pain? Who taught you to tolerate pain? Pain is here to let us know something's wrong. It's not for us to tough it out. That is not it. We are supposed to be the hypersensitive beings that we are. We're not supposed to learn to tolerate things that are unsafe and uncomfortable for us. Moving through discomfort is different than toughing out discomfort. And so I always ask, what is the courageous thing in this moment? For me, the courageous thing as a workaholic, tough it out, badge of honor, high tolerance for pain wearing young woman. What was courageous for me was to take a nap, was to go to the spa, was to get a massage, was to show myself some love. And if you sit on the couch and you eat potato chips and you watch TV all day, it's courageous of you to get up and go for a run or go do something for your body and for your health and your well-being. But if all you do is run yourself ragged and burn the candle at both ends, you are not brave for toughing something out in therapy, in treatment, with plant medicine, whatever you're doing. The opposite of what your tendency is the courageous thing oftentimes. And I had to find the courage to slow everything down. I had to find the courage to realize that to rest was brave.
Gosh, and so difficult for you to do that, because we talk about slowing down, healing the nervous system, or that's how the nervous system heals. It wasn't safe for you to slow down, and the very way I love the way you talk so openly about the cutoff. I could almost feel it here, that it was this brain that wants to learn. And it's no surprise to me as a therapist, the function of that learning is no surprise to me, that even as a little girl, you wanted answers that you couldn't get where you were. And you were searching, something's going to show me the answers. Something isn't right. Something isn't right. I want to learn. But this the cut off here, and then your body storing it all, storing, filling up, and you're just raising yourself taller to keep learning. I won't go there. And we see this all the time in therapy, this split between mind and body. And allowing yourself to, I even saw your shoulders relax then, because you've allowed yourself. Actually, I let myself now. I let myself feel and stop and slow down. And that was just, I just had to share that, witnessing you there and not.
Thank you.
I know the work that takes to come out of your mind and go into your body in with childhood trauma, particularly.
It's terrifying, and I again, I sing Dr. Ruan's praises all day, every day. But my doctor noticed that when I would be speaking about one person in particular in my childhood, that I would start yawning. I would start shuffling into the corner of the couch. I would start pulling the blanket around me. I wanted the weighted blanket on me. And my body was making me tired. And she said, every time you talk about this person, your body wants to close it down. It's really not safe for you to talk about her. So we're going to do more resourcing and bringing more safety in, and bringing aspects of my future selves or people that I felt safe with, or my cat, into my awareness, to just feel that safety that you immediately get when you bring in those safe faces and beings. And one time we were doing a Zoom treat. I was filming, so we were on Zoom, and I wasn't in the office with her, and I was like, and I literally, like you were describing, like my consciousness was moving to my chin, forehead, and trying to leave my body because I didn't want to talk about this person. And she's like, are you somewhere where you can make some tea? And I was like, yes, I'm in my hotel room. I can turn on the kettle. And I made some tea, and she said, I want you to track the hot water moving down your body into your stomach. And suddenly I was back in my body.
Yeah.
It's not difficult. It's a simple process, but it isn't easy because it's scary. It's so scary. So, I was talking with someone earlier today, and I was like, my doctor told me you have the right to have needs and have them be met in a relationship. And I was like, what? Huh? She's like, I know. It's this crazy thing where you have the right to have needs and to be able to speak them from that chopped off neck, from that throat that's so closed and silenced for so long. And then I became the silencer with the ironclad grip on my own throat. But one of the things that's so hard to do if you can't be in your body is to know you have needs. I would register mild discomfort when I was in absolute terror. We go to my co-stars from 90210, we go to this like haunted, like not scary farm, this haunted amusement park that they put on here in Los Angeles every year at Halloween. And they would be like, put AnnaLynne in the front. She doesn't get scared of anything. And if I was hooked up and you were reading my physiological state, you would notice my heart rate would skyrocket. But I was the picture of calm. I'd be like, oh, nice makeup. You look super bloody. Is that an axe coming out of your head? And they couldn't scare me. No one could scare me. My body was so trained that during terror, during torture, during torment, to show absolutely no response, even as my physiological state is just racked.
Of course it was.
Betraying myself over and over again, not wittingly, not knowingly. This was what was put onto me, and then I continued their work.
Of course.
And
of course.
I am on a path to unbetraying myself, to living an unbetrayed life. And it means that in the moments where I least want to speak up for myself, I speak. And when it's uncomfortable, I go inside myself and say, you don't have to speak. You don't ever have to say a word.
Beautiful.
You don't need to do anything that you don't want to do. But if you feel so inclined, I just want you to know you have the right to have this need and have it be met. But you don't ever have to acknowledge it if you don't want to. And just the permission, that validating permission that this moment sucks and you have every right to show up in the wrong way because it's right for you.
And the parenting brain that comes in there, the parenting part of us that comes in to protect the parts. AnnaLynne, you talked about your, I don't know what you'd like to call them, but your alters or your parts. And we talked about it in terms of parts, but you've integrated them now, haven't you?
You know, I did, if there's a moment where something arises, sometimes I'll find another one, but they're it's very subtle now. It's like the majority has fused. So we work together as one unit to go find the lost sheep. And it's my consciousness brings it in the most perfect way. It triggers me in some god awful way. I'm all upset. I don't know why. And oftentimes, and I really hope that people who experience this and aren't sure what they're going through take this to heart. It'll feel like there's a frosted glass between me and what I want to feel, and I can't get to it. I'm so committed to feeling now because I was so numb and numbed for so long that my system now, I'm super clear, and so I'm aware when there's something just not quite right. So I'm really attuned to myself. But there will be a feeling that I can't get to. It's right there. It's just on the other side of that frosted glass, and I can't reach it, and it can't get to me. And we go in, and we do what I call spiritual surgery. We go in, and I just start asking unraveling questions. It's sacred undoing. I just start sacredly undoing myself. Like, where do I feel it in my body? I start locating the area that I feel it in, and I start focusing on that area. I start asking, when's the first time I felt this? And I ask to see if anything will come up. And it's rare now, but fairly recently I did have a little block of parts that were trapped. And here's how the trigger came. This is the universe, y'all. It's not rude, but it feels like it is.
Okay.
I got trapped in an elevator in Las Vegas. Up until this moment, had always had severe claustrophobia. So getting trapped in an elevator was not a super fun, cool thing for the universe to do to me, for me to heal this part of myself. In fact, I was like 2 middle fingers to the universe. How dare you do the one thing that I know I can't handle?
And I'm in this space with my older sister because she was in town. She was visiting. We were in town for the rugby, the they do like the end of year rugby premierships and stuff. They do like one game in in Las Vegas, and so we both came in town for it. And she's doing what I used to do. Her body's the picture of calm, but I know she's actually freaking out for me. She doesn't have claustrophobia. She went into handle it mode, big sister handle it mode, gonna get sister out of the elevator. I am intent on staying highly present because I know that this is a terrifying thing for my body. So I'm like, okay, we are here in this moment. And we are moving deeply into the corner of this elevator. And now we need our shoes and belt off. And now we need to sit on the floor. And all of this is okay. It was probably only 3 minutes. Angel got on the phone. The people, she's saying every trigger word possible. We're trapped. It's not moving. We push the buttons. They're not lighting up. I'm like, every word is just making, no. Each one's just making my body just go worse and worse and worse. It was only 3 minutes, but 3 minutes is an eternity when you're in torment. Yeah, 30 seconds is a long time. So 3 minutes was a torment, a moment. And we were all dressed up first, going to see a show. Like I was, my hair, my makeup, my outfit, it was all, and here I am. And I crawl out of the elevator. And there's a woman like waiting for the elevator. And I was like, please don't go in there. Please don't go in that elevator. It doesn't work. And I was like, take off. She must have been like, okay, loony bin just let out. And I get, because now I'm at a process with myself where I have such a container to hold this moment for myself. And so I get myself onto, I'm like, we're at a sweet spot. We're feeling a lot. For someone who's been numb for a long time, to be in a spot where you're feeling deeply, that's a sacred spot, and you grab that quickly before it flies away. So I'm like, there's something here. I'm being given a moment, as terrifying as that was, but I'm being given this moment to be this triggered, to close that loop, that circle that's been like incomplete this entire time through my life. And I remember being locked under my house as a form of punishment. And I was left there for so long that I believe, from what I saw or the replay, I believe that I started to hallucinate a snake, which was my big phobia at the time. And I remember telling my doctor like years ago, I was like, I had remembered this memory, but I couldn't touch it. It was too uncomfortable. But I had a flash of being under the house, and I had a flash of a snake. But it's really weird, Dr. Rowan, because the snake's like kind of floating. It's not like I don't think it's really there. And then we left that because I was dealing with a lot of other stuff, and that one wasn't really fully fledging. I believed that my little self, my little 8-year-old self, trapped under that house, had been there for so long that I had some kind of form of psychosis or hallucination or something, because all of that returned, and the feeling that it brought with it was just horrendous. And luckily, I'm the fucks I give went that way kind of girl. And I was in this hotel, and there was a long corridor, and I was like, I need to run right now. I need to run for my life. And my body, that's what my body wanted to do. My legs were numb and like aching. And I was like, there's energy in my body. I want to run for my life right now. And I was trapped under a house. I was trapped in an elevator. It was the same thing. I was there. There's my sister reminding me of my childhood too. Like all these moments were creating this beautiful opportunity of medicine for me to heal this painful memory that had kept me terrified of small spaces my whole life. And I took off down that corridor like I was running the 400-meter sprint, like I just flew, and my earrings are flying off. Like it's wild. The neighbors in the hotel are like, is she okay? What's happening? And I came running back, and my system is going, and Angel, my older sister, just anchored the energy and held a beautiful space and container for me in that moment. And I just started processing this really deeply painful thing that now could fully play itself out, because and Benjamin Fry in in The Invisible Lion, he says this, it's not even what they did to me that I remember that's so painful. That's betrayal and that hurts my feelings, what they did. But the actual experience of being trapped in there was my survival instinct not being realized because I was trapped. I felt like I needed to run and I was trapped. And all of that life force, how we conjure the ability to save our own life, the amount of energy and inertia we build, and then it gets trapped in your cells. Of course, this turns to cancer. Of course, this turns to all of these dis-ease created diseases. Of course, it doesn't help our process in having a healed and whole body, both emotionally, spiritually, but also physically, medically. These energies that intense, trapped for years and years, compounded by time. That's so in that moment, I got to fully experience that time again with the ability to hold myself in that space and makeup running down my face, tears streaming. I just let it all happen. And this lovely gentleman came out and just checked on us and was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Clearly I'm not, but we're getting there." And he held this just yummy, just protective masculine energy, just a stranger being kind. And when we show up for ourselves and we show kindness to ourselves, we breed kindness from others. And out of nowhere, he was just going to get some ice, and there's two girls on the floor, one's crying her eyes out, and he just held a space. Kindness from strangers, it reminds us of who and what we actually are here. And he started sharing that he's been dealing with PTSD, and we ended up getting into a full conversation where we got to hold him too and say, "Look, I said something. I said my PTSD with claustrophobia showed up. I said that was the herd of buffalo you heard running down the corridor. It was me." Because I was taking this moment, and I don't care who's around me and what they think of me.
No.
I'm showing up for that little girl that no one showed up for, that someone left in a crawl space under a house because that was the place they were at with their pain.
Yeah.
But that was the level they could show up for their 8-year-old daughter. And so I wasn't going to let any onlooker's eyes take me away from showing up for her in that moment.
And as you were saying your story, that what a great example of that. What a great example. But as you was talking through your story, I thought, please tell me you ran. Please tell me you did. Please tell me you did what your nervous system had been holding on to for so many years, because you closed that loop, didn't you?
Yeah.
You got rid of that energy. And when we say, so you hear so often people say, "Oh, they just need to calm down, or they just need to go and do some meditation." No, sometimes you need to hit that pillow, run for your life. You need to act out what you were not allowed to do when you were a child. And I love I'm here for all of that running and the earrings and the tears. Just My book, Choose You, is out now and offers you ways to prioritize you, meet your needs, say yes to you, develop a more secure sense of self where you feel you matter, learn to set boundaries, wrap yourself in self-love, find your authentic self, and ultimately choose you in the same way you would want those you love to choose themselves too. Choose You, out now. AnnaLynne, just before we come to the next part of the podcast, to answer a few more questions, I wondered if you could, just for anyone who's listening, that your story may desperately, sadly relate in some way, and they are sat there and they haven't gone down this healing path yet to look. I wonder if you had some words or some kindness to offer them at this point.
I do. And I will preface it by saying I'm going into my deepest heart to speak to your deepest heart, which may be offline, but perhaps has felt a tinge in this conversation. And I'm so grateful that you're showing up for you by being here. Unapologetic, radical grace. Unapologetic, radical compassion. Showing up for a potential you that you can't see a pathway to just now is the pathway to that version of yourself. I didn't think that kids with stories like mine could live lives like I'm living now. I thought there was a certain level of happiness that you could get to, but it capped for those kids like me. And the people with good childhoods, they got to be the happy ones. And the rest of us, at the time, I felt were just waiting to die. That was my outlook on life. I wake up every morning grateful to be alive. I live vibrantly, fully and completely in every cell of my being, because I'm willing to at least intend to show up unapologetically, radically, with grace and compassion for myself. I invite you into this. It might sound terrifying, and if it does, I can hold that space for you too. But it is the pathway to the truest you, the you deserve to know. And if for nothing else, there's a wild, crazy blonde chick somewhere in the world rooting you on. So here's all my love from the bottom of my heart to you and this journey that you're embarking upon. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for showing up for yourself. You wouldn't have found this podcast if you weren't already on the path. So congratulations. It's probably too late for you. You're going to figure it out.
That was perfect. You're so right. They're already listening. They're already beginning to have that small element of self-awareness. That was so beautiful. You're so generous. You're so beautiful. Thank you. You've gone to places I didn't ever expect you to go in this conversation. And I really didn't. That wasn't ever my purpose, to invite you on to talk about those things like that. And I am really grateful for you sharing. And I feel tearful, because for someone to have experienced that and then be able to give language to it, you mentioned Brené earlier, but Brené's quote, I can't remember it word for word, but telling your story, your truth, for others to know that they then have hope or permission to heal from it. It's very much that. I should have looked the quote up, but her
paraphrasing,
quote.
But yeah, I know the quote.
I know, but
it's
absolutely what you do in your work. And I'm incredibly grateful for you, actually. And I know my community will be. And as we talked about off camera, that ripple effect is so important in this work. You don't know who you've touched today. You don't know who you've touched and helped. So thank you. But my Instagram community are just wonderful and so engaging. And I did get hundreds of questions come in around early life trauma. Because I said I would be speaking to someone that had gone through and had grown and gone through and done her healing journey. So I've picked out a few, but I'll just ask a couple. The first one I'm going to ask is, how did you manage to let go of your past?
I think we have a tendency to want to put it all out there, write it in the journal, set the journal on fire, and now I'm free. The end of the movie. Yay! Academy Awards, And the reality is it's a spiral, this crazy little thing we call life. It goes in a spiral, and we have to let go many, many, many times. And when you think you've let go of something, you end up trapped in an elevator and realize how not let go you really are. Instead of letting go, even though letting go is a big part of my process. Surrender is a huge part of the process. Active surrender. It's not defeat. When I talk to men, they get so annoyed with that word. Oh, surrender. I'll never surrender, And I'm like, it's active surrender. It's actually very difficult, especially for you guys who are so tough. To surrender to the truth of my story is the equation that's the equal point of letting go. So what I mean by that is, this happened. This is how I remember my life. I'll use Dr. Dan Siegel's phrase of what forgiveness is. He says, forgiveness is giving up all hope that the past can ever be changed. Walking through my life and giving up hope that my dad didn't lock me in a crawl space, that people didn't lie and cheat and deceive and call it Christianity and religion, that I wasn't groomed to be something for someone's disposable use before I was tossed aside. Giving up hope that I could ever change any of those things. That was the beginning of that spiral. And I return to that every time I need to, anytime I need to. I haven't lost progress. We don't regress. You don't unexperience what you've experienced. If you've lived through forgiveness and you need to forgive deeper, yourself, others, just the process of giving up hope that you can change something that's already occurred, spiral deeper into it, knowing full well that you are making even more progress. I think of it like a screw going into the wood, It's going around and around, but it's getting deeper.
Yeah.
Until there is a finish point. And what that finish point looks like, it's not that you've let it go, but it's that you've reframed it in such a way that now it adds value to your life. And my story in this moment right now, with your permission to be on your podcast, I'm being able to show that a story that sounds horrific in a lot of ways actually has a lot of value. That screw is all the way in the wall now. And if I ever need to remove it, or if it's ever not doing its job and I need to replace it or put a cap in there, I'll go back in. I am an archaeologist of my emotional experience. Like, I am always excavating the depths of my emotional self in my body, through my body, with the gift that is my body. But I don't think we ever fully let go. I think it's that we transform, we transcend and transmute. So if you are putting on yourself to get a A+ grade on letting go, it's more about active surrender. And that means that right now I'm not letting go, and I can't, and I don't want to, and that's okay. And on Tuesday, it might look a little better than Monday. And on Thursday, it might look a little worse than Monday and Tuesday. So that space to show up for your best in every moment, and that your best looks different depending on how you feel.
Yeah. And then in that, you're giving yourself permission, aren't you? You are in control of that process, as opposed to that kind of almost severed letting go. It brings yourself back to having the control of it. As you said about the screw in the wall, if you need to go back in, you will choose to go back in. It then becomes your choice. And I think that's such an important word in that healing process, isn't it? You now have a choice. You may not have had a choice, but now you have a choice.
You do. And I'll say one more thing as a cautionary tale.
Please.
In the theme of letting go, there is a lot of spiritual bypassing that people do. To be above something or beyond it, to have transcended it for all of time. And it's a lovely, lovely, lofty desire. It's also unrealistic. You can remove the emotional charge, which is really what I think the question is about. How can I not feel this pain again and again and again? The emotional charge for me is gone. And if it ever, again, if I want to move that painting around the wall and I need to put that screw somewhere else and there's still pain attached to it, I'll find it.
Yeah.
It'll come organically. I don't have to go looking for it. I don't have to search for it. So I don't need to go too deep in the search. But I also don't need to pretend that just because I felt it one time, that it's now gone completely and I am above it, and discounting myself on that spiral, that twist, that circle of what might come back again. So the cautionary tale is just honoring the level of let go you're at, wherever you find yourself, that this is exactly where you're supposed to be. And this is one of those stepping stones across that river to that path where the sun shines a little brighter and it feels a little bit better, but it's only because emotional charge has reduced in your body proper. Really, that's the feeling of safety, is less emotional charge. And you do that by showing up for every moment that you need to let go again.
And as you were saying that, I could feel that processing feeling of the less of that emotional charge. And that can take your length of time. No one else's, your length of time. It's your processing. And that will look different for everyone.
Yeah, it can happen. It can happen in a moment. You can fully process. You could do a Kundalini workshop and breathe it all the way out.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes.
But if it comes back around, nothing, no ground was lost.
No.
You're just in a deeper level of the twist.
I love that. I love that answer. Thank you. I'm going to ask you one more. Again, we don't know the context. I can't see behind the question, but is it common to have a feeling that something is missing after childhood trauma?
Whew.
Yeah, I know. It's a big question.
Take a big breath on that one. Yeah. Just breathing with the beautiful questioner in this moment right now. The answer that comes is yes. Yes, it's very common. And if you're experiencing that, I am right here with you. I've had many spirals, many levels and layers of this, and it feels like, now I've done all this. Now what?
Yeah.
Right? That almost the hunt to heal. Then you're healing, and now what? What do you do next? And first of all, it's very human. So congratulations, you're officially human. Good job. Proud of you. Secondarily, this is what I do in that moment. I'll offer you that. I feel like something's missing. Where is that coming from? When did I first feel that? Where do I feel that in my body? Who told me there needed to be something more? Is there something more? Is it okay if there isn't something more? Is it okay for me to feel that something's missing? Can I just be okay with that feeling? Any of these questions, all of these questions will lead you to more questions. This is the sacred undoing that we were discussing earlier. My doctor also would always say, nothing comes from nowhere, which presupposes that something comes from somewhere. There's something there. Your brilliant, incredibly intelligent system is communicating something with you. You're being invited to go deeper with yourself, and you might be exhausted. You might be so tired of this cycle. You don't want to do this anymore. Say that. I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired of feeling like something's missing. I'm so tired of feeling like I just can't get to the other side. The more you offer yourself up to yourself as the permission slip, the more those feelings that are associated around that question can once again release emotional charge. You can handle anything in the world outside when this world, the world of the body, feels safe and is in homeostasis.
Yeah.
The way we find that is to check in with the felt sense What am I feeling? Where is it? I don't need a why right now. I just need to check in with how it feels. Can I breathe into it? Can I love deeper into it? Can I hold it deeper? Can I grab it and wrap my nourishing arms around it until it becomes something else? And when it's in that something else space, then that next question can unravel deeper.
And I love the way you brought in there, because this is what I do all the time in my own practice, is that question after question and that connecting to the felt sense. Please tell me you know Genderling's work.
Yes.
Yes. When you were talking, so the focusing, that real going deeper with those questions. And what you would so beautifully brought forward there was that deeper inner knowing and trusting yourself that you know and that you can find those answers through those questions. They're searching questions, getting gently curious with ourselves. Perfect answer. AnnaLynne, it has been absolutely beautiful to talk to you. It's been a surreal experience for me, and I'm so grateful for you spending some time with me to talk through this. It's been invaluable. It really has. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, it's an absolute privilege and an honor to be a part of this beautiful podcast and to be able to share with your community and hopefully have them feel seen and felt on the inside of me, because I definitely see and feel all of those icky stickies and those yummy wummies and all of the things in between. So thank you, and to your beautiful daughter for being the mastermind behind the podcast coming into being. I honor both of you deeply, and it's always really healing for my heart to see mother-daughter dynamics that are safe and true and authentic, and that's not always the case for some of us kids. So it's beautiful to witness, and I thank you in that regard, and I just thank you for this opportunity to be a part of this today.
Oh, you're so, so welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining myself and AnnaLynne today. I'm so moved by AnnaLynne's bravery, her honesty, and her deep humanity that she brought to this conversation. However, if today's episode stirred something in you emotionally, physically, somatically, please know that's so valid and so understandable. These are heavy, real topics. And while they can be painful, they're also a reminder of just how much our nervous systems are just trying to protect us. So before we close, I'd like to offer you all a short moment of grounding. Just 30 seconds to help you come back into your body right here, right now. So if it feels safe to do so, close your eyes or soften your gaze. Take a deep breath in through your nose and slowly exhale through your mouth. Again, inhale and gently exhale. Feel the surface beneath you. Notice any points of contact, your feet on the ground, your back against the chair. Let that just be enough for now. You are safe, you are here, and you are not alone. And when you're ready, gently bring your awareness back to the space around you. Open your eyes and just take in your surroundings. And just be here for a moment. And then if you feel that someone you love is struggling or you have struggled with this episode, I've linked some resources in the show notes that may help. Please don't hesitate to reach out to someone that you trust. Until next time, be gentle with yourself.